Dobbular here with Mr. Keaton Weiss, filling in for Jimmy Dore, who picked the right time to get out of town, I must say.
Yes.
Timing is impeccable. All right, so as you might have heard, big changes at Facebook. If, like me, you have a lot of leftover liberal deadwood in your social media, the meltdown has been remarkable. It's really been remarkable, people begging for censorship. So Mark Zuckerberg put out a statement, almost looking human. They put a lot of blush on him, I understand. They have a new blood-like fluid that they can pump into these androids to make them look almost lifelike. He almost looks human here. Translation, this is from Raziel. He's pretty funny. Facebook is in hemorrhagic shock from all the people leaving because of our shitty censorship policies, and we're trying to stop the bleeding too little too late. Well, we shall see. We shall see. I've already seen some libs being like, well, I'm out of here. You can find me on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I saw one of them.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just take a look.
I want to talk about something important today, because it's time to get back to our roots around free expression on Facebook and Instagram. I started building social media to give people a voice. I gave a speech at Georgetown 5 years ago about the importance of protecting free expression, and I still believe this today. But a lot has happened over the last several years. There's been widespread debate about potential harms from online content. Governments and legacy media have pushed to censor more and more. A lot of this is clearly political, but there's also a lot of legitimately bad stuff out there. Drugs, terrorism, child exploitation. These are things that we take very seriously, and I want to make sure that we handle responsibly. So we built a lot of complex systems to moderate content. But the problem with complex systems is they make mistakes. Even if they accidentally censor just 1% of posts, that's millions of people. And we've reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. So we're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US. After Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy. We tried in good faith to address those concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth. But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US. So over the next couple of months, we're going to phase in a more comprehensive community notes system. Second, we're going to simplify our...
Okay, so don't forget, and I'm sure anybody who's a regular viewer of the Jimmy Dore Show does not need to be reminded, that the intention behind this fact-checking was always highly political. It was always from a political angle. They were thrilled about Obama's, we'll see this a little later, well, they were thrilled about Obama's team using Facebook as part of their election strategy. It wasn't a problem until they felt that Trump had benefited from using Facebook as a political strategy. During COVID, you couldn't say anything about a lab leak. You could not say anything about a lab leak. So it went well beyond fact checking, which with Facebook, they specifically, Facebook and companies like Facebook specifically have a carve out, Section 230, that keeps them from being liable for content published on their platforms under the presumption that they are not doing journalism. Now, at that point, why do you need to fact check? That's like fact checking people debating in a park. If it's a town square, why would you need to fact check it? I don't even understand why people feel like you would go to social media and assume what you read there is true.
Well, I don't understand if liberals are so smart. I mean, if they're so smart, what do they need the fact checkers for? Don't they know everything already? Don't they know what's true and what's not true?
Well,
Can't they figure that out?
Well, they behave like they do, that's for sure.
Yeah.
God forbid people hear opinions and have to figure it out for themselves, because that's what we're really talking about here. We don't even impose standards like that on newspapers. If newspapers get something factually incorrect, it's up to them. Print a retraction, don't. I mean, unless it's some kind of libelous claim, there's no basis for a lawsuit if a newspaper is wrong. The whole weekly world news couldn't be published if that were the standard.
Right, of course.
content policies and get rid of a bunch of restrictions on topics like immigration and gender that are just out of touch with mainstream discourse. What started as a movement to be more inclusive has increasingly been used to shut down opinions and shut out people with different ideas, and it's gone too far. So I want to make sure that people can share their beliefs and experiences on our platforms. Third, we're changing how we enforce our policies to reduce the mistakes that account for the vast majority of censorship on our platforms. We used to have filters that scanned for any policy violation. Now, we're going to focus those filters on tackling illegal and high-severity violations. And for lower-severity violations, we're going to rely on someone reporting an issue before we take action. The problem is that the filters make mistakes, and they take down a lot of content that they shouldn't. So by dialing them back, we're going to dramatically reduce the amount of censorship on our platforms. We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. Fourth, we're bringing back civic content. For a while, the community asked to see less politics because it was making people stressed, so we stopped recommending these posts. But it feels like we're in a new era now, and we're starting to get feedback that people want to see this content again. So we're going to start phasing this back into Facebook, Instagram, and Threads while working to keep the communities friendly and positive. Fifth, we're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams. Finally, we're going to work with President Trump to push back on governments around the world that are going after American companies and pushing to censor more. The US has the strongest constitutional protections for free expression in the world. Europe has an ever-increasing number of laws institutionalizing censorship and making it difficult to build anything innovative there. Latin American countries have secret courts that can order companies to quietly take things down. China has censored our apps from even working in the country. The only way that we can push back on this global trend is with the support of the US government. And that's why it's been so difficult over the past 4 years when even the US government has pushed for censorship. By going after us and other American companies, it has emboldened other governments to go even further. But now we have the opportunity to restore free expression, and I am excited to take it. It'll take time to get this right, and these are complex systems. They're never going to be perfect. There's also a lot of illegal stuff that we still need to work very hard to remove. But the bottom line is that after years of having our content moderation work focus primarily on removing content, it is time to focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our systems, and getting back to our roots about giving people voice. I'm looking forward to this next chapter. Stay good out there, and more to come soon.
Okay. All right. Lieutenant Commander Data has come a long way. Okay. So, hey, that is good. Schellenberger, Taibbi have been raising the alarms about how they have been trying to impose a censorship regime in countries that have less robust free speech protections than we have in the United States as a means of forcing platforms in the United States to adopt those same policies rather than to have different policies for each country they operate in. The fact that the election of Trump seems to have encouraged people like Zuckerberg, who, to be fair, along with his fellow social media platform owners, I think at that time Dorsey too, they all got dragged in front of Congress after Trump won and really intimidated into adopting these policies that ideologically I don't think they ever wanted to. I think they're kind of techno-libertarian in that way. They were perfectly happy to just leave people to have their conversations within certain boundaries, obviously human trafficking, things like that, which is what he's talking about. He's talking about going back to a sensible model. Now, of course, given that Trump and his entire team are a bunch of AIPAC-owned maniacs, we'll see if this follows through for very long after they take over, or if it's just a matter of being allowed to misgender people. But it's a promising trend. Hey, as much as we have criticisms of Elon, and we're going to have some pretty serious criticisms later in the show, fact is I'm able to put up my Israel content there and criticisms of Israel. Some of it goes viral. I can't say it's all shadow banned or suppressed. Certainly much better than what you might have had under Dorsey in that regard. So we'll see what happens on Facebook. on the platform that we're on. Hey, we're filling in for Jimmy. I'll keep it inside the lines here. But YouTube's one of the worst. You can't even really engage with people in the comments section on YouTube. Like, it's actually a very good example of what he's talking about, that the AI gets it wrong. Like, you can't say anything. Like, sometimes you'll get comments taken down there where it's just like, what did I say? Like, you give someone a recipe and get it taken down. Like, that's when you've got the AI cranked up to 11.
Sure.
So,
and one part of the one way they sort of get around that is they don't necessarily, so for those who leave comment sections on videos, they don't necessarily delete them. What they'll do is they'll hold them for review. So they will hold it for review so that the channel admins have to go through and read them and say, okay, is this good or bad? Which a channel
You're
like
not gonna
ours on the Dude Dissidents, we don't have the time or resources to check those.
We don't even know that's happening.
Like this one with 1.5 million subs, like there's no way you can go through all these comments and forget it. It's impossible. So yeah, look, social media, and Facebook in terms of the Israel issue, easily the worst. Instagram, Facebook, notorious for censoring content critical of Israel. In terms of just the overall trend here, yeah, Facebook's motto was move fast, break things. That's the way these tech guys think. They don't want to make extra work for themselves. It is not in their interest to create 100 pages of guidelines and rules and terms and then have people or robots enforce them. Like, that's more work. Look at how Mark Zuckerberg dresses. He dresses like, he's worth $50. Like, they like working off a laptop in their penthouses in sweatshirts and shorts and getting filthy rich doing almost nothing. So all of this enforcement and censorship, it's more work for them.
Sure,
they don't want to do it. They did it because the Democratic Party
were forced to do it.
Don't forget, they dragged Mark Zuckerberg to Congress and brought him to heel.
Well, that's where I say, like, you're seeing a lot of these headlines about, Zuckerberg's giving in. Yes, in a sense, but really, if anything, I think it's a relief for him. He's doing what he wanted to do. Now he doesn't have the Democrats forcing him to do. It was with the censorship that he was actually being forced to bend the knee to a greater power. Here, I think he's just reverting to form. And I hope maybe our host here, YouTube, will follow suit with the trend, since things are trending this way. I'd be surprised if they didn't loosen up a little bit, and maybe we'll never have it back the way that it was 10 years ago, where you could really put anything up there within reason, but a little more reasonable than what it is now, where we have to really walk on eggshells when we do segments. So let's take a quick look at some of the details here and some of the delicious lib meltdown. Meta is getting rid of fact checkers, and look at how they frame it in CNN. Zuckerberg acknowledged more harmful content will appear on the platforms now. Now, you just heard the video. Is that really the takeaway from what he said? He said very reasonably, hey, nothing's going to be perfect. And he admits there's going to be more harmful content.
You're going to find more recipes with soybean oil now.
Yeah.
Be on the lookout.
not with RFK on the job. Yeah. Meta's newly appointed chief of global affairs, Joel Kaplan, told Fox on Tuesday that Meta's partnerships with third-party fact checkers were well-intentioned at the outset, but there's just been too much political bias in what they choose to fact check and how. The announcement comes amid a broader apparent ideological shift to the right within Meta's top ranks, and as Zuckerberg seeks to improve his relationship with Trump before the president-elect takes office later this month. Just one day earlier, Meta announced Trump ally and UFC CEO Dana White would join its board, along with 2 other new directors. That's almost more significant. Meta has also said it will donate $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund, and that Zuckerberg wants to take an active role in tech policy discussions. Everyone wants a seat at that table, man. Kaplan A prominent Republican who was elevated to the company's top policy job last week acknowledged that the Tuesday announcement is directly related to the changing administration. The Real Facebook Oversight Board, an outside accountability organization whose name is a play on the company's official group, comprised of academics, lawyers, and civil rights advocates, including early Facebook investor Roger McNamee, said the policy changes represent Meta going full MAGA. Meta's announcement today is a retreat from any sane and safe approach to content moderation, the group said in a statement, calling the changes political pandering. Although Meta's fact-checking partners repeatedly said they checked claims from both the right and left, Trump supporters and other conservatives have long claimed that the system restricted their voices. But now Zuckerberg is following in the footsteps of fellow social media leader Musk, who, after acquiring X, then known as Twitter, in 2022, dismantled the company's fact-checking teams and made user-generated context labels called community notes the platform's only method of correcting false claims. So this is Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan show talking about how they wound up creating this fact-checking regime. Does not sound like the real motive was checking facts so much as it was getting the FBI off his back. Let's take a look.
The background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. There was we thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. Yeah, I don't want our company to decide what's misinformation and what's not. So when we work with third parties and basically let different organizations do that.
All right, so let me translate that for you. Basically, what that means is they got Democrat Party aligned hall monitors and paid them, because really this was all about keeping the Democratic Party establishment, which was in power at the time and had the ability to really screw his company, keep them happy. Okay, you want me to hire your friends to fact check my platform? Fine. Up to 45% of their total revenue was coming from Facebook for these fact-checking companies. That's why you're seeing a meltdown, just like with the DEI departments that are getting dismantled. This is their income. This is their livelihood. You're taking away their grift now. So cue liberal meltdown. A new era of lies. Mark Zuckerberg has just ushered in an extinction-level event for truth on social media, which, again, I don't understand why you go to social media for that. I do not go to social media to find out what the truth is unless I want to do a lot of digging around, and then I'm going to be selective in whose voice I pay attention to. Why does everybody need to be wrapped in bubble wrap? Like, what? You can be exposed to opinions you don't like. So here's Public Citizen. Actually, ironically, this was posted on X. Meta is ending its fact-checking program. Let's be real. This is Meta shamelessly saying that the truth doesn't matter. Mark our words. Facebook and Instagram users are about to see a lot more dangerous misinformation in their feeds. Oh, no. Oh, dear. Someone get me the smelling salts. This is Kara Swisher. She's a technology reporter. Toxic floods of lies. This is in response to Brian Stelter reporting on this. Toxic floods of lies on social media platforms like Facebook have destroyed trust, not fact checkers. Let me reiterate. Mark Zuckerberg has never cared about that and never will. Well, you're right. You're right. And, you know, it's funny. You guys were very excited about the fact that Twitter was a public platform that Jack Dorsey could manage as he would. And then as soon as that Elon applied that same standard, all of a sudden, the unaccountability of billionaires owning these platforms, it became a problem. It wasn't a problem when you liked the billionaire. Now, you may remember Scary Poppins here, a.k.a. Nina Jankowicz, who the Biden administration in their wisdom was actually going to make the disinformation czar until Republican politicians and the press got a hold of it. Now she's making loot with her own misinformation company, disinformation company. In case you don't remember, this is when she was in government. She put this out.
Is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, yeah, they were going to make her the misinformation czar. Let's be clear. The fact checkers have not been politically biased, as Zuck suggests, but have been perceived as such because of politically motivated efforts to smear them, one that Zuck is now participating in and capitulating to. Zuck's announcement is a full bending of the knee to Trump and an attempt to catch up to Musk in his race to the bottom. The implications are going to be widespread. Fact-checking was not a panacea to disinformation on Facebook, but it was an important part of moderation. Bumpers are fully off the lane now. P.S. Fact checks don't suppress speech. Fact checks are actually more speech. Now, it's amazing to me that none of these people understand the core principle: who watches the watchmen, who fact checks the fact checkers.
Well, actually, community notes are more speech, and that's what Facebook is going to start doing now. They're going to go to a community notes model, just like X has, where if somebody posts something that's not true and enough people put in a note, then it displays it underneath. That's more speech, right? Having a select few determine what is true and false, that's not really more speech, because they have disproportionate influence over the average user. More speech means everyone gets to talk. That's what it is. The other thing, obviously, there was a political bias to the fact checkers. It's absurd to even indulge that as if, what she said there. Well, it wasn't biased at all. I mean, that's just absurd. But even if I were to grant you that there was no bias, that's not even really the main point. The main point is, what do you need them for? What do you need them for? The only reason you would need fact checkers, even if they were completely on the straight and narrow, is if you do not trust the public to express opinions on the platform. And they do not. At which point, what's the point of the platform? The whole point of social media is that everyone gets a voice. So if you are skeptical of that to the point where you feel you need to anoint a select few to supervise them, well, then you just shouldn't have the platform. Or you should just say, all right, cat photos and family photos only. Nothing else. Nothing else is allowed.
Which, hey, the marketplace created a place for you, Blue Sky. Nobody's there. All of you censorious prigs can go over there and cry about people using the R slur. This was just a headline in Rolling Stone. The return of the R word is a dark statement about the moment that we're living in. Man, if that's what's keeping you up nights, there are a lot of people who wish they had your problems, buddy. So Taibbi, of course, weighed in on this in his inimitable fashion by looking at the talk about prigs. You can't find any bigger prigs than the people in the New York Times comment section. So a little comment here in his outlet, Racket News, and he showed how none of these media outlets had a problem with Obama using Facebook. They celebrated it. Obama, Facebook, and the power of friendship. The 2012 data election. Look at all these headlines from all these outlets that are horrified now at Mark Zuckerberg's announcement. Obama, Facebook in 2012. They were so happy about it. This is Taibbi. In his video yesterday, Zuckerberg cited press pressure as part of the reason for proposed changes. Quote, after Trump first got elected in 2016, the legacy media wrote nonstop about how misinformation was a threat to democracy, he said. Meta tried to address such concerns without becoming the arbiters of truth, he said, but fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the U.S. Now, this is really the kicker here. As they're talking about misinformation, they spread misinformation, as Taibbi points out. One would think that legacy media outlets covering Zuckerberg's video address might mention this. No luck. Neither the Washington Post nor the Times mentioned the legacy media comments. Both papers' readers, in other words, were served a curated version of reality that snipped out uncomfortable details. And God, do they wish the whole world could be like that. A sample of the yuppie authoritarian fare in both papers' comment sections, complaining about loosened restraints and begging for more whip cracking. So just a couple of samples he threw in here. But you don't have free speech. And this is still Taibbi. 5 years ago, people argued against the First Amendment in code, usually by campaigning against disinformation. After all, who's against the idea of free speech? But Times readers have reached the stage of being outraged that a private platform that doesn't have to endorse civil liberties does. So this is Mark in the Mist from Seattle. I am hoping that a torrent of lawsuits as a consequence of the damage of Facebook's policies will force them to adhere to their terms of service. One forgets that one actually has no freedom of speech on a private platform. The fact that they continually fail to enforce their TOS should result in massive consequences. Sadly, we know that the power of Meta's legal department dwarfs those of the average citizen. Thus, the rich and powerful escape consequences. What an inversion of a vision of power. Oh, yeah, the Jimmy Stewart-esque everyman fighting for more censorship against the corrupt cabal that wants to give him his freedom of speech. This is Keith. Zuckerberg is confusing Facebook with the public square where free speech prevails. He owns a private company and is under no obligation to allow anyone to publish information that may harm public health or safety. Okay, but it is very much a public square, right? It very much functions as that. It specifically has a carve-out in law distinguishing it from newspapers. So it is just amazing to see all of these people who, would consider themselves liberal, who have, and Taibbi is right, it's really the frog in the pot of boiling water. Gradually, their media and their leaders introduced the idea that too much speech is dangerous. In the words of Francisco Franco, too much democracy is like too much oxygen. It'll kill you. They gradually got that idea in their head. And originally, because classically freedom of speech was such a liberal red line, right? You absolutely had to defend. I may disagree with what you say. I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. Gradually, they got their minds right to the point that they will literally fight against freedom of speech on the most bizarre grounds. So it's a private platform. He has no obligation to allow freedom of speech. Well, why does that imply that he shouldn't? Like,
well,
what
exactly.
What are you
that's the
talking
conversation
about?
that they don't want to have. That's what makes them such cowards, and they think they're so smart, right? They're so self-satisfied. Right. Zuckerberg is confusing Facebook with the public square where free speech prevails. He owns a private company and is under no obligation to allow anyone to publish information. Okay, he's under no obligation to uphold free speech. We understand that, but we think that he should. Even though he's under no obligation.
Right.
We
and why
think
don't
he
you?
should uphold
and why don't
free
you?
speech because we're against censorship, and you believe that he shouldn't uphold free speech because you like censorship.
Right.
They hide behind this distinction that they think makes them such geniuses. Well, it's a private company, so that's not technically violating your free speech. They hide behind that because they don't want to admit that actually they don't like free speech.
Right.
They like censorship.
Because they don't like the public.
Exactly. So whenever one of these people says that to you, well, they're a private company, they're under no obligation, you simply say, yes, I understand that. But don't you think they should uphold free speech principles anyway? Just cut right through it. Just roll right over it because they have no answer to that. That's why they make this private company excuse. They make the excuse because they don't want to out
all of a sudden they're libertarians
as being anti-free speech. They don't want to out themselves in that way, but they are. So just steamroll right over that point and say, yes, we understand your point. You're not a genius for making it. Doesn't take a smart person to make that point. Anybody can make that point. You're not nearly as smart as you think you are. Sorry. Now let's get to the substance of this. Do you like censorship or not? Because they do, and we don't. And it's as simple as that.
Well, they fundamentally don't believe in democracy, and everything else proceeds from there. The Trump election broke their brains. It is a political movement of censorious hall monitors. These are all the kids who brought an apple to the teacher, and that's the political party that they're attracted to as grown-ups. The idea that they're not going to be given a cookie and an apple juice and get to take a nap on their desk and have the teacher tell them for the rest of their lives exactly what's safe and what's not safe and what they're supposed to believe, that is inherently horrifying to them. These are people who want to be coddled, taken care of, told what to do, told what to think. They don't have an original thought in their head, and that's why everything they say reads as if it came right out of a New York Times op-ed.
All right, everybody. Well, that wraps the YouTube portion of the show. I think we should head over to Rumble now, should we not?
We should.
Let's do